A Japanese high school student named Seiichi Hiiragi is our protagonist. He's fat, ugly, short, and is also smelly. You can probably guess what life must be like for him. He gets bullied, mocked, ostracized, and downright neglected. It's hard not to feel some sense of sympathy for this protagonist, and there are other students in his school who feel the same way as well. They know that despite his appearance and status, he's genuinely a good guy who'd lend a helping hand to just about anyone. However, one day, his class receives a message from a metaphysical entity who informs them about how they are about to be isekai'd to another world. Though they'll have to pair up with each other because the voice says so. Also, the stats and basic abilities of all the students start showing up on a blue screen. So, considering this and other things, they all start choosing their partners. As you can expect, Seiichi is the only one who doesn't get chosen. If his general appearance wasn't enough, the man was cursed with level 1 stats. Any rational student just wouldn't choose him. He can only watch as all of his other students disappear right before him. But then the voice decides to take him to the other world as well. He's given a special skill which basically allows him to adapt to just about anything, but instead of the civilization where the others were teleported, Seiichi ends up in the middle of nowhere. It's like the Amazon rainforest, just a massive jungle where it's him and the animals. Seiichi soon finds a fruit which tastes disgusting. And no, it's not a devil fruit. What we have here is the fruit of evolution. Eating this fruit somehow causes a change to happen in his body. He loses some body fat, and a robotic voice tells him about how the fruit he ate basically helps things evolve. So he continues to find ways to survive. Sometimes he steals food in this fruit from the animals, sometimes he does something else. But before he knew it, he had lost most of his body fat, he had gotten taller and was now looking more like a handsome protagonist. This way of life continues for over 5 months, during which he never comes across another human. And then one day, a rare reddish-pink gorilla shows up. Things look like they could go wrong because this gorilla is something akin to a final boss, but Keiichi's physical appearance and demeanor impress her so much that she instantly falls in love with him. Seiichi is rather reserved because he doesn't really see the female gorilla in that way. However, he continues to humor her. She takes care of things, washes his clothes, makes food, and even explains how this world works. When he tries to escape, she finds him and brings him back. She's basically his wife. The name of this female gorilla is Saria. These easygoing days continue until one day when he tries to escape again, only to then come across a certain cave which Saria had warned not to go. It is here that Seiichi realizes that there's more than one boss-level enemy in this forest. Inside the cave was an undead knight. At first he's surprised by Seiichi's entrance. He didn't know there were any humans out here in the forest. But then that surprise turns to contempt as the knight prepares himself to kill our protagonist. But right at the critical point when a sword strike is going to end him, Saria shows up right between the strike and Seiichi and ends up taking the sword in his stead. Until this point, Seiichi wasn't really as serious about Saria as she was, but seeing her basically give her life to save him was eye-opening. Tears start flowing out of his eyes as he realizes just how ungrateful he's been of Saria. Her soul starts to fade away, and the sadness turns into anger as Seiichi braces himself to stop the undead knight. Due to his continuous consumption of evolution fruit, he somehow manages to win. He kills the undead knight, and hence in turn also ends up freeing the man's soul. Following this battle, Seiichi shares a few moments with Saria. They both tear up, and as a display of their love for each other, they share a kiss. But fate works in mysterious ways because the moment he kisses Saria, she evolves into a gorgeous girl with a radiant red hair, just lying there in all her naked glory. And just like how Saria evolved, Seiichi evolves as well as a result of defeating the Death Knight. Over the past 5 or so months he has had plenty of subtle evolutions. He was already good-looking, but now with this one, Seiichi turns into a tall, handsome, and fit young man. His physical appearance has done a 180 compared to where he was before coming to this world. Now handsome Seiichi, he's about to share a pleasant moment with Saria, when a sheep-like mascot character pops up out of nowhere and reveals himself to be the administrator of this dungeon. He gives Saria a beautiful white dress and Seiichi a helmet, which will later reveal itself to be a robe, and then teleports them outside of this forest. Their journey together had only just begun. And as for his classmates from back in school, they're doing pretty well, being properly trained in magic and martial arts at an academy. But unlike what they may have expected in the beginning, this seems more like physical training instead of all the fun adventures, and their goal is to defeat the Demon Lord. A few students seem genuinely concerned about Seiichi. Little do they know that their loser buddy has already gotten married and is now the strong protagonist. Going back to Seiichi and Saria, They travel through the lands, kill slimes and other monsters. Soon enough, they arrive at the royal capital of Wimberg and try to join the local adventurers guild. In doing so, they will also get official ids. Once inside, all they see are perverts shamelessly engaging in their fetishes out in the open. Seiichi was alright, but he didn't want his sweet wife seeing all this, so he decides to walk out with her, but they're stopped by the guildmaster, who then introduces them to an astounding girl named Artoria. They'll now have to finish some jobs under her supervision to become official members. Her chocolate skin and brazen clothes make her look like she's a tough nut to crack, but Artoria is just as sweet and kind girl who only ever wants to do good. Saria starts by looking after some kids in a church, while Seiichi takes care of a building demolition, and then he also walks a noble lady's dog. All in all, our duo manages to accomplish these tasks quite quickly. Moving on, Artoria asks them to take something more akin to an official test. Considering how Seiichi and Saria got here, this was easy enough for them, until they fall into a trap and get teleported into a dungeon. This dungeon is presumably inhabited by the Black Dragon God, and they're trapped in this astounding labyrinth. A wall pops up out of nowhere and separates Artoria from the other two. While she has to fight monsters, the other two end up coming across a chest, which allows them to level up even more. Artoria keeps moving forward, but sadly ends up in the deepest reach of the dungeon, right where the Black Dragon God resides. Honestly, this girl has no luck at all. As you can expect, she's left with no choice but to fend for herself against the dragon god, but the poor girl stands no chance. She was at the brink of death when suddenly Seiichi and Saria pop up and save her life. Seiichi now has to fight the dragon himself, but it's a level 5000 beast. To put this in perspective, when he was summoned, he was level 1. Saria was the level 1000 gorilla, and then the undead knight was level 1500. These two were tough opponents for him, which is why it's easy to see how Seiichi may have a tough time against the dragon god. But Seiichi once again manages to pull through. He slashes the dragon and effectively slays him. In turn, it also grants him the power of spatial magic, along with many other boosts. Using this, he teleports them all back to where they were. He was carrying Artoria when they walked back to the guild, but she just starts blaming herself for all that happened. As it turns out, her bad luck is no joke. It's -2 million. She is misfortune personified. Artoria was looking pretty down in the dumps, but Seiichi assures her that it'll be okay. Then later, while she's shedding tears by herself, Seiichi shows up from behind, gives her a warm hug, and then puts a rare ring on her finger that he found back in the dungeon. It's pretty much a confession. Conveniently, the ring had special abilities which nullified her bad luck and blesses her with good luck. Everything Seiichi did makes her so happy that our sweet chocolatey girl turns bright red and then runs classic Sandra moment. Subsequently, a high authority in the Demon Lord's army hears about the Black Dragon God's death. They wonder if someone has started a war between the humans and the demons again. Now Seiichi realizes that it's about time he started looking for any information he could find about his classmates, so he goes to the royal library. Meanwhile, Artoria is hopelessly in love with him, so much so she can't stop blushing for a single moment. Seiichi was also thinking about Artoria. He wanted to make things up with her. When he's at the cafe, the manager and a good local named Ronzi tells him to be honest with her. Similarly, Artoria is vividly told by her friend Adriana about how she's madly in love with him. Soon enough, the two come face to face with each other. They're approaching each other, and just like that, Artoria has already blessed our protagonist with a kiss. This was her confession. Although she knows that he already has Saria, she wants to be with him as well. Surprisingly enough, Saria witnesses this, and just casually gives them permission to be lovers. Now Seiichi have two beautiful girls by his side, and they love him with all their heart. Seiichi becomes an A-rank adventurer, and so the guildmaster tells him to get himself a horse and participate in the upcoming race. He takes them up on the advice and visits the local stable. There are quite a lot of strong horses, but he ends up choosing the rather aggressive female donkey. She seems hungry, so he gets her some food. He also comes across a young artist named May, who is being bothered by her friend to enter the royal art competition, which will be held about a month after the race. Seiichi notices this and tells him that if he wins the race, May shall enter the competition. The day of the competition soon arrived, and our donkey named Lulu seemed sick and tired because she didn't have a proper breakfast before getting here. This causes them to lag behind the others when the race starts, but Seiichi had one of those fruit of evolution on him. He feeds one to her, and thanks to it, she instantly shows impressive levels of improvement in speed and aggressiveness. Seiichi and Lulu not only bypass everyone else, they also destroy the traps that were set up by those who were ahead and end up finishing in first place. Thanks to that fruit of evolution, Lulu turns into a beautiful donkey girl. It leads to yet another embarrassing scene because she obviously didn't have any clothes on. But for what it's worth, Seiichi now has 3 girls, but then he was escorted to the castle by the Valkyries. This development is because he won first place in the race, and as a reward he gets to spend a day with the Valkyries. These are girls who are revered as the strongest warriors in the kingdom. The captain of the Valkyries, named Louise Blaze, challenges him to a training match with her gentle blue hair. She has quite a graceful appearance, not to mention her reputation as the strongest Valkyrie. That's not an individual that should be taken lightly in any context. At first, Seiichi thinks he wouldn't be able to stand a chance against her. But when their duel begins, he neatly dodges her attacks and disarms her before she knows it. Even Seiichi himself doesn't know just how high the limit of his abilities go. Louise was taken aback by this, but she accepts her loss and declares that she is Seiichi's apprentice. Though before this could develop any further, the king of this kingdom is attacked by an assassin. This was an emergency. All the Valkyries immediately act, and they apprehend the assassin, who appears to be a little girl. He's now in a critical condition because of the curse. Seiichi uses his abilities to understand the king's medical situation and cures him using a healing spell. As it turns out, the king is actually the good man he met at the cafe, who told him to just be honest with Artoria. This earns him trust of the king, and the king also gives him the freedom to practice and learn skills in the castle. Meanwhile, the mentor who was in charge of the students asks the emperor about why they were sent to that academy. To this, the emperor reveals that he had placed bracelets on all the students in order to make sure that they never become a threat to their empire. He's also the one who sent that little girl to assassinate the king. It's revealed that this girl is from an ancient race who is now being used by the emperor as a slave. Speaking of the little girl, her name is Olga, and she's now being interrogated by the Valkyries. They aren't being too nice, but after noticing that Olga was wearing a slave collar, which is basically the cause of why she did what she did, they decide to stop interrogating. Seiichi's with the other girls get there too. He then uses his abilities to break the collar, and he also creates his own liberation spell, which essentially frees Olga. The girl simply bursts into tears. She's genuinely grateful for this. She introduces herself and explains how she was separated from her kind when she was just a child, and the emperor then had her be trained to become an assassin. She feels disgusted with herself and states that her hands are full of blood, but Seiichi holds her hands and comforts her by stating that it wasn't her fault. The one in the wrong was the Kaiser Empire. Seiichi also tells her that she will be his younger sister from now on. Poor little girl was slaving away all this time without ever getting the chance to rest or catch a break. She's still afraid though of what the Empire might do, but Seiichi assures her that he is much stronger than he looks. After this, Seiichi trains a little bit with the Valkyries, but apparently Louise had to go take a look at the borders because of some monster activity that had been reported. So she tells Seiichi to take care of the king while she's away. The girl has a lot of respect for Seiichi. Days go by and soon it's been a week since Louise left with her army. Today was a special day though, because the legendary wizard named Barnabas was here. He is the one who mentored the current king. The old man mentions that the Otherworld students were transferred to the Barbados Magical Academy. This is the first time Seiichi finally learned something about the whereabouts of his former classmates. While this comical yet interesting conversation was going on, a soldier arrives in the castle and informs them about an army of 5,000 monsters that is about to invade the capital city. Louise and the Valkyries are fighting against the monsters on the border, along with the legendary Black Paladin, who is this nation's finest soldier, which is why there's no one who can protect the capital. This is where Seiichi comes in. Along with the remaining soldiers and the Adventurer Guild, the gang unites to take down the monsters. Seiichi's girl team seems especially motivated to steamroll the enemy. Seiichi and Barnabas observe with the king while everyone else attacks, but the old wizard tells him to simply observe and see the power of their allies. The Adventurers Guild was casually using perverted traps and whatnot on the monsters. In the end, Seiichi didn't have to do a thing while everyone else eliminated the monstrous army. Sadly, this was just the first wave of the army, and the next one is much stronger and devious when they arrive. Things don't go nearly as well as last time, and this prompts Seiichi to act. He comes up with an offensive spell called Judgment, and this spell basically just works like a cheat code. Within a moment, lightning flashes from the skies and specifically kills all the enemies without harming any of the allies. Just like that, he had eliminated the second wave of the army, and his level increases several folds. The great wizard Barnabas commends his talents and asks him if he'd like to be a teacher at the Barbados Academy. He's excited about this opportunity. He gets to teach magic, and the students will be his former classmates, but he wants Barnabas to wait until after Louise and her Valkyries have returned. because leaving the capital unattended would not be a wise decision. Plus, he also has the girls to look after. But Barnabas is okay with waiting for when Louise returns. He can also bring the girls to the academy. In the following days, he and the girls have quite a lot of wholesome moments together, just walking around being silly and careless. And then, of course, there was the art contest where May ended up winning first place. As for what she drew, it was a beautiful painting of Seiichi riding Lulu. After a while, Louise returns along with all the Valkyries, and so Seiichi and his girls bid farewell to the city and leave for the academy. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord is disappointed because his army's lost and he wasn't able to resurrect himself. But then a follower of the Demon Lord reveals that their next target is the Barbados Academy. This is where the first season of the anime finishes things up, but of course the story continues. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.